If you're thinking about starting and running your own property development or construction business, one of the things that you need to be comfortable with is understanding architectural and construction drawings, known in some countries as construction blueprints. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how I interpret architectural drawings so that I can understand the construction project that I'm working on, and also how these drawings can be interpreted so that you can perform measurements and takeoffs for the purpose of estimating construction costs. My name is Aaron. I'm a chartered quantity surveyor and owner of Hayden Construction Services, a management consultant to the real estate development and construction industry, where I help my clients scale their businesses, make more profit, and secure more contracts. And so without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, so the first drawing we're going to take a look at is what's known as the site plan. So hopefully you can see my screen here. I've just jumped onto the laptop and I've brought this drawing up, and this is the site plan. And this is the site plan of a development that I was involved in. So I was the lead commercial manager running this project. And it's a 28 unit scheme that consists of three different blocks. We have Block A, which was a former police station, so a grade 2 listed building that was to be converted into 5 apartments. And then we have Block B, which is the new build ground up development of a block of 18 apartments. And then moving to the rear of the site, we have Block C, and this consists of 5 townhouses. And the reason why I'm starting with the site plan is because it's a great drawing for us to take a look at so that we can begin to get our bearings around the construction site and get an understanding for what it is that we're actually constructing. If you think about it from this perspective, if you have a if you have a plot of land and there's currently no buildings on that site, it can be quite difficult to envisage the layout of the site and where the buildings will be situated. And so the site plan is a really good drawing for us to get started on in understanding the construction project. And the reason why the site plan is important, and the reason why I like to start with the site plan, is because it helps me to get my head around how I'm going to be managing the project. So it helps me to understand the logistics involved in running this construction project, how I'm going to set up the site. So in accordance with CDM regulations here in the UK, by law, you have to provide welfare facilities to your site staff and subcontractors and labourers. And that means that you have to provide toilets, a canteen, and also a washroom, so somewhere to shower and get changed. Obviously, you've got to think about running the site. You're going to have a site cabin as well. And the site plan helps you to kind of preempt where you're going to have the welfare facilities and the site cabin located relative to the other buildings. And logistically, this project here was situated right next to a main road. So we have Hermitage Road here. We have a public footpath that runs adjacent to Block B. And then we have our site entrance here. So as you can see here, this is the site entrance. And you can see the external boundary of the site as well. So it tells us where our site is situated in relation to neighbouring properties. So this was this is a neighbouring site. So I'm trying to just get my head around what it was that was actually on this site now. So this was hospital buildings. I think it was a mental health hospital. Important to know where your site boundaries are again, so that you can manage the construction process. Because the last thing you want is to have your project shut down because you've had a lot of debris and waste making its way over into neighbouring properties. So this is a really good thing to get started with. And as I mentioned, I've just mentioned earlier about the different blocks involved in this development. And you can see some of the landscaping as well. So I actually issued this drawing out to our landscaping subcontractor for them to price the hard landscaping and the soft landscaping. So the hard landscaping being all of the paving. So you can see here, so this is This is paved areas. We have vehicle access gates. We also have a pedestrian gate that allows you to gain access to the site. And then your soft landscaping would be any planting of trees, and obviously you have here grass, so this would be seeded. It will actually be a turfed area, so the landscaper would install grass to these rear gardens. And also, I think we have some flower beds here as well. And another thing, just in going back to CDM regulations, you'd want to make sure that this site is secure. So I would be looking at this drawing to figure out how I'm going to install my site hoarding so that I can protect the site from passers-by, pedestrians who may find themselves wandering into a live construction project. So really good drawing to use and get your head around for the purpose of understanding the site. And so how do we know that we're looking at a site plan? Well, if we scroll down into the bottom right section here, the architect tells us that this is the site plan. They also tell us that this drawing is for construction, meaning that the drawing is fully up to date, and for the purpose of construction, we can use this drawing to go ahead and actually start getting quotes back in from subcontractors and procuring materials. Um, if it was a previous revision, if we had, for example, for review, I would be a little bit more reluctant to use this drawing to actually construct anything on site. So you always want to make sure that your architect has labelled these drawings for construction before you actually go about building anything on the site. And these drawings will also come with a drawing reference number. So this one, 1618 SK-25. You got to think of it like this. If you're running a construction project, and I've been involved in sites where I'm building 951 units, a huge development scheme, and you're often dealing with thousands of drawings. So it makes it so much easier if the drawings have been referenced. And what you would normally use on building sites of this nature is what's known as a BIM software system, otherwise known as Building Information Management System. And if anybody references a drawing and they tell you to go and look at the site plan, they can give you this reference number. You can punch this into the BIM software and it will bring up this drawing. So it's very useful for your architect to actually label the drawings with a reference number. Makes it so much easier for you to navigate your way around the site from a drawing perspective. Now, this drawing in this section also tells us that the drawing is scaled at 1 to 100 on A1 paper. That means that if you was to print this drawing, you would print it off on A1 paper, which is it's a very large sheet of paper. And then you would measure it with a scaled ruler at the scale of 1 to 100. Now, I'm using a system called Bluebeam for my measurements and takeoffs. Other people use things like PlanSwift. I personally have more of a preference for Bluebeam. I've got more experience using that. But you would calibrate your software at a scale of 1 to 100 so that you can begin your takeoffs and measuring the construction drawings. So just a little bit more detail on this particular drawing. I think I've pretty much covered the fact that we have hard and soft landscaping on this project. But yeah, I mean, the landscaping contractor is definitely a contractor who would be interested in looking at this. But I would normally send it out to most subcontractors because I want them to understand the site layout. I want them to understand where they could potentially be storing materials, how they're going to gain access to the site, offloading any materials from HGVs, lorries, trucks, for example, and where our site cabins will also be located as well. So, really good drawing to get your head around as a starting point for trying to understand your construction project. Okay, so the next drawing that we're going to go ahead and take a look at is the elevation drawings. So let me just go ahead and open this drawing up. Okay, so this is our elevation drawing, and this one specifically is for Block B of the development project. So the Block B is the 18 new build apartments that will be constructed from the ground up. And so these are the elevation drawings. Again, really good drawings to start getting your head around and trying to understand what the finished building is going to look like. So from here, you can see that we're looking at this from the east elevation, and you can see that we have a ground floor, first floor, second floor, and third floor. And it goes into quite a lot of detail here. You can see the windows, the doors, you can see the balconies, and I'll explain what elevation drawings are. So in construction terms, when you're dealing with large, complex construction projects, you've got to be very particular about the way that you communicate information to subcontractors, to your contractor, or to the property developer. So communication is very important. And so on a project like this, for example, for somebody that doesn't understand the the construction way of communicating information, could quite easily describe this as the side of the building, or maybe the rear of the building, or the left flank of the building, for example. I don't know what's happening there. Yeah, or they could refer to this as the left flank of the building. But in construction terms, that could mean anything to anybody. So somebody could interpret the rear of the building differently from how another person may interpret the rear of the building. So in this instance, we use what's known as elevation drawings, and we refer to each side of the building as either a north, south, east, or west elevation. And when we talk about elevations, we're talking about, so for example, the north elevation. So this is the north facing side of the building. And this south elevation would be the south facing side of the building. So it just makes things a lot more easier when you're communicating to people. But essentially what we have here is pretty much a depiction of what the building will look like when it's been completed. And so how do we know we are looking at the elevation drawing? Well, again, if we scroll down into this bottom right-hand corner here, we can see that we have the Block B elevations. And again, we have our drawing number. We have our scale, which is scaled at 1 to 100. And we can pretty much ignore these here. So this is just the initials of the individual who drew this particular drawing and who it was checked by in their team. So architects will normally have an architect who's responsible for drawing, and then it would be checked by a colleague. So that's pretty self-explanatory, but I want to bring your attention to this here, and this is the revision. So as you can see here, we are on revision F, and that means that the first revision of this drawing would have been revision A, and revision A tells me that it likely would have been a planning drawing. It would have been something the architect put together to get planning approval from the local authorities. That's pretty much your concept design. So when you're at the planning stage and when you have um, the first revision is normally a concept design to be presented for planning purposes. And once you get planning, you then progress through the what's known as the river stages. So planning and concept design would normally be river stages 1 to 2, and then river stages 3 to 4 is when you start getting into the construction drawings. Um, so yeah, this would be revision F, and this tells me as well that it's for construction, meaning that we're probably dealing with the latest revision of this drawing, meaning that we're ready to go out and actually start constructing on the building site, because this tells us that it's for construction and that we're working from the latest revision. Very important because you can end up getting into all sorts of problems if you issue outdated information to your contractors or you go out to procurement for materials and subcontractors. And if you're not working from the latest revision, you run the risk of working from outdated information, which could lead to problems further down the line. And so it's always a good idea to check with your architect just to make sure that you're working from the latest revision before you go out and start constructing anything on a building site or going out to subcontractors for procurement. So, good idea, pick up the phone and ask the architect what the latest drawing revision is. And you can reference the drawing number. So I talked about this a little bit earlier. So reference the drawing number and just ask them the question, what's the latest revision of this drawing? And they should be able to tell you what the latest revision is, which in this case is revision F. So that explains a little bit more about how you can navigate the drawings and making sure that you're working from the most up-to-date drawings. And so let's go ahead and explore a little bit more about what this building will look like. And I'm also going to draw your attention to the material schedule, which has also been included on this drawing as well. So these architects, very, very useful. They included a material schedule with imposed reference numbers on the actual drawing itself for me to make reference to. So let's go ahead and look at the east elevation of this drawing, and let's just pick out a couple of reference numbers and actually try to wrap our heads around what it is that we're looking at. So if we look at this item here, well, you can see all of these various different numbers. So you have 1, 2, you have 9 here, there's 11 up here. So we know that we have some reference points, and we can refer to the material schedule to understand what they are. So let's look at this one, for example. Number one. We have a number one here, and we can consistently see that number one is being imposed on what looks to be the windows of this project. And so let's scroll along over to the material schedule, which is over here. So, right, what we've got here is the material schedule. And if we look at reference number one, which is what's included on these drawings. So that's a number one. Yeah, a number one's here, a number one on in this section. So number one tells us that these are windows and patio doors, and they're made from composite metal frame and they will be double glazed. And it tells us also that windows within the brickwork are to be the colour RAL 7024, which is graphite grey, and windows contained within the zinc cladding is to match VM zinc pigmento red, and the nearest match for that is RAL 8025. So when you go out to your external window and door suppliers, you can reference this. So you would send this drawing over to them for them to take off their quantities. You would probably have a window schedule, an external window and door schedule that would accompany this drawing, and it lists out the various different measurements for each and every window and door which is on the project. But obviously this is very useful because it tells the supplier exactly what color they need to manufacture these windows and doors to. So very useful that this material schedule has been included within this drawing. Now let's have a look at another item. Let's pick out another item here. Now, when I first looked at this drawing, when I joined this project, I couldn't quite get my head around what these number twos could potentially be. It's a detail which sits under most windows on this project, on this particular block. And so, item number two, let's go ahead and have a look at the material schedule and see what this actually is. Sorry. Right, we scroll along. Okay. Okay, so reference number two under the material schedule is an inset spandrel panel. And this is made from precast concrete or reconstituted stone panel, and the color is sandstone. So again, we know that when we go out to procure these inset spandrel panels, that we know that it should be made from either precast concrete or reconstituted stone, and we know that the color should be sandstone. Let's go ahead and pick out another random reference number. Let's let's have a look and see what 11 is. So this is on the 3rd floor. Reference number 11. We look at the material schedule, and reference number 11 is wall cladding to the top floor, vertical standing seam zinc cladding, and the color again is pigmento red. So this is in a conservation area, this project, which means that you have to be very particular about the materials that you're procuring. They have to meet the requirements set out in this material schedule. So if we're being told that that the color should be pigmento red, and that you're given a reference number, a color reference number, say for example the windows as RAL 7024, you have to make sure that you're procuring the materials in line with that. The reason being is because it is a conservation zone, and if you end up procuring materials that don't meet the planned requirements, so the local authorities would have given authority for planning based on this material schedule, and if you don't meet this material schedule, you run the risk of having to strip them back out and replace them again, which is just not where you want to be. So very important to use the material schedule and these drawings when you're procuring materials. And this drawing as well, it gives us a little bit of detail about things like the balconies. So we know from looking at this that we have balconies. And so obviously if you're looking at this and you're thinking, okay, well what are the balconies made from? How do I know that I'm going to procure the correct balconies? Well, again, if we look at these numbers, these reference 18, we scroll along to the material schedule, we've got it right here, balconies and Juliet balconies. And these are made from galvanized and PPC steel handrail and balustrade, and the color is RAL 7024 graphite grey with matching metal sheet soffits. So a really good drawing, and again very important drawing to get your head around, because it's going to help you to understand what it is that you're building, because it gives you that impression of what it's going to look like when it's been completed. So very useful elevation drawings. Okay, so the next set of drawings that we're going to take a look at are the floor plans. So again, I'm just going to go ahead and open up the ground floor and first floor plans. And again, these are a very good set of drawings, and I'm only showing you the ground floor and the first floor here as an example. Obviously, we do have the second floor and the third floor, but again, I can talk you through this. So we've got here, I'm just going to show you the ground floor. Okay, so we've got the ground floor here, and this tells us the various different plots that are contained within Block B. So on the ground floor, we have plots 1 to 4. So starting at this end, we have plot 1, plot 2, plot 3, and plot 4. And this is a useful drawing because it tells us the layout of the apartments. So if we take block 4 as an example, we can see that we have an entry point here, we have a bedroom on the right hand side, we have a corridor, we have some storage, we have the bathroom, and then we have a living and kitchen area. And this one, plot 3, we can see slightly different. We have 2 bedrooms in this particular apartment, with the kitchen and living room here. And in between, we actually have a communal area. So we have communal access to this building through this door here. So you can see that, you can tell when they're doors because they tend to have um, this line that kind of follows behind the door, and that shows the way that the door opens. So this is an entry door, so it opens from out to in, and that's also the case for the doors inside the property as well. So we have here some service cupboards, we have a cleaner's store, and this entrance leads us to the stair core, where you can take the stairs to access the first floor. And so if you're making your way up from the ground floor to the first floor, you would then enter into this stair core area, and then you can access other apartments such as plot 8, for example. So you would come up the communal stair core and you would make your way into plot 8 by using the stair core and entering in through the communal area. So this is a really good drawing, and let's just go ahead and scroll down and I'll show you that this drawing is Block B, ground and first floor plans. So starting to build up a bit of a theme here, that you always come to this area to find the information as to what drawing you're actually looking at. And it's always worth doing this, especially when you're working on apartment builds, because I've made the mistake before where I thought I was looking at, say, the ground and the first floor, and it actually turned out I was looking at the second and the third floor. And we can avoid that simply by looking at this section here, and it clearly tells us that this is the ground and first floor plans. And again, we have a drawing reference number here. We know which revision we're working for. The only difference with this one is that it's labeled as for approval, which means that I would be a little bit cautious about using this to construct anything with. For approval in this instance, it was a design and build contract, so it means that this architect's drawing needs to be approved by the contractor before you actually start building anything with it. And we can see here that the scale is slightly different. So we have a scale here of 1 to 50. Now, I'm going to use my software and I'm just going to show you how you can actually spot check these measurements and make sure that you're scaling up this drawing so that you can perform your measurements and take off. So if I go ahead and I grab this here, so this is a measurement for the length. I can plot against this area here, and then what it's going to ask me to do is to set my scale, and we know that this is scaled at 1 to 50, so let's go ahead and select 1 to 50 from the drop down, and we can apply the scale. And what we have here, I'm just going to move this down so you can see that measurement that I just took. We can see that it matches up with the measurements included on this drawing by the architect. So this is 1.5 meters. And again, it's useful that they provide us with that scale, because if you're not scaling the drawings correctly, you could end up performing the incorrect takeoffs and estimates. So let me just go ahead and just remove this out of the way. And yeah, again, so the architect has actually included some measurements, some overall measurements of the floor plan area. So we've got 58.6 meters squared for plot 1. And again, we can use our estimating, our takeoff software, our measurement software, to just double check that. And then it gives us confidence that when we issue these out to subcontractors or to contractors for pricing, say for example, we're issuing these drawings out to the flooring contractor, and they're going to be supplying and installing carpet, or supplying and installing wood laminate flooring. We know that the drawings that we've provided already have the correct measurements on them, and that if they want to perform their own takeoff, they absolutely can. But we're quite confident that this plot has an internal floor area of 58.6 meters squared. There's also some qualifying notes on these drawings as well. just some additional notes that tell us, um, for example, light fittings and smoke detectors, um, roof access hatches are to be placed away from stairs to enable easy access for maintenance. So it gives us some guidance on where we are to install the roof access hatches. Again, just picking out something random. Services, for example, gas supplies, meter, meter and gas riser works, ventilation in the risers. The architect recommends that you consult your M&E consultants for this purpose. And that's absolutely true because these are architects, they're not mechanical and electrical engineering consultants. It's a completely different profession. So you would share this drawing with your M&E consultants, and your M&E consultants will be able to provide the relevant schematics needed to then start installing your mechanical and electrical work. Now, there is just one more thing that I want to show you that can be read in conjunction with these drawings. And so I'm just going to go ahead and open this up now. And this will be the proposed external material schedule. So we talked about this earlier as part of the elevation drawings. There was a list of external material schedule that told us the specifications of the materials. And again, you would issue this out along with the drawings when you're procuring contractors or subcontractors, or when you're procuring materials from building suppliers and building merchants, because it details everything required. So windows and doors, it tells you the proposed materials, it tells you the proposed finish. Again, if we look at those inset spandrel panels, it tells us that the materials to be sandstone or similar, and that the finish should be precast concrete or reconstituted stone spandrel panel, and that the colour should be sandstone to match the existing police station, obviously going back to that conservation area. And then it says that it's to be manufactured by a specialist manufacturer, and that submitted to planners. So we have a column here, submitted to planners. So sample submitted. So we know that we have a sample and that we provide that sample to our material supplier so that they can match that sample when they're manufacturing these inset spandrel panels. And so that's it for today's video. I really hope you got something useful from that. Drop me a comment below. Let me know what topics you'd like me to cover in the future. And once again, like this video and subscribe to my channel to watch more educational content on the subject of construction and real estate. Once again, my name is Aaron. I'm a chartered quantity surveyor and owner of Hayden Construction Services, a management consultant to the real estate development and construction industry. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.